Hey, what is up guys, and welcome to another video. Today we have a bit of an unusual one. I recently had a conversation with Hans, a Naked Convo with, and we talked about a very questionable election that took place in 2016 as a presidential election of the International Natures Federation. Now Hans happened to be one of the people that were responsible for counting these votes, so his testimony is a very interesting one. Since the conversation lasts over an hour and a half, and I feel that what we talked about is very important to our community and more people should be aware of this situation, I'm deciding to make this video that is a short version so I can explain to you the timeline of events that we mentioned during that conversation. If you are interested in consulting all of the documents that I'm going to be mentioning right now and the same documents that we talked about during this conversation with Hans, or also, if you're interested in watching the full video, you could find the link in the description or on the tweet where I'm going to share this quick video. So the first thing that we talked about was that in 2016 in New Zealand, during a General Assembly in November, there was an election to choose the president of the International Natures Federation, a position that was going to last 4 years. At the time of this event, there was only one candidate, that was Siglinde Ivo, sitting president at that time. And before the election took place, one of the federations, the New Zealand, proposed a candidate that is Armand Jr. He was the president and the delegate or the official representative of the French Federation at that time. So the votes took place and the final result was 104 votes for Armand and 99 votes for Siglinde, giving Armand a clear win of this election. Now, this result was obviously not a happy result by the board of directors, so after this, they decided to leave early this assembly and go to their hotel. During that ride, Hans, that is the person that I talked to, overheard them speaking in German. They, according to him, thought that he didn't understand German. So during that conversation, Siglinde mentioned something that is very important. She was very concerned because before this election, without knowing what the outcome was going to be, she decided to extend a 5-year lease on the headquarters of the International Natures Federation. That happened to be the headquarters that she moved when she started being president, and this same headquarters is located in the same building complex as the apartments where Siglinde currently resides. So she was very concerned, and at the end of this conversation, or at some point, John Peters, that was the secretary of the Federation, that also happened to be the person that presided this election, told her not to worry about it, that he was going to take care of it. And he did. There is a letter that is dated on November 25th, 2016. John Peters sends out this letter to all of the national federations that are the official members of this assembly, informing them that there was a complaint received by a couple of federations. And the irregularities that he mentions are 3. Now, this is important because John Peters was presiding this event. He was the main responsible person to make sure that everything was followed according to the statutes. And the second person that was also responsible for this was the person representing the legal counsel. So he states, before the election, Armand and Siglinde stepped out of the room. Now, this is something that is not stipulated by the rules, but it's a tradition. If there's going to be an election where you are the candidate, the tradition says you have to step out to give other people the freedom to choose. Armand stepped out, but Armand was the delegate of the French Federation at the time. He, when he left the room, passed the votes to another one of the representatives that were present in the room. It was his sidekick. He gave him the French votes and he stepped out of the room. In this letter, he's stipulating that that was an irregularity and that it was something that shouldn't have taken place. The second thing, according to John Peters, was that there was a discrepancy between the total amount of votes that were in Armand's favor. He said that he heard it was 103 votes, but this was quickly corrected by Hans, that was one of the people in charge of counting the votes, and confirmed by Claudia, the second person that was in charge of counting the votes. So at that time, everyone in the room heard that it was 104 votes versus 99. But John Peter says that this discrepancy had to result in a second election. They had to do this a second time, but he never said anything at the time of this meeting. And the third thing that he mentions was that the delegate from the Danish Federation had to step out because he was going to catch his flight. He stated that the Danish Federation passed those votes on to another federation, but the Danish Federation also had votes from Finland and Norway, and according to the rules, the Danish and the Finn Federation had to give authorization in order for this other federation to vote on their behalf. At the time that the delegate leaves the room, he actually asks John Peters, that was presiding, for authorization to pass on those votes. John Peter gives him verbal authorization to do so, and this person steps out of the room. So they stated that because of these three reasons, there was no confidence in the legitimacy of this election, and he was going to pass this on to the legal counsel. Now, the legal counsel was present during this election, but never said anything at the time. And well, in a letter dated on December 20th, 2016, the legal counsel decides that because of all of this, now, interesting fact, the legal counsel does not have authorization according to the statutes to validate an election or invalidate an election. But they state that because there was uncertainty in the process, the only thing that could be done was to have a second election. Now, the second election was supposed to take place on July 2017 in Vienna. Vienna happens to be the hometown of Siglinde, the same place where she extended the 5-year lease before knowing what the results of this election was going to take place. Now, before the second election takes place, the board of directors, which is Siglinde, president, notify the federations that out of the 3 candidates that were registered for the second election, only one meets the requirements. That happens to be the president, Siglinde Ivo. That the other 2 do not meet the requirements, and for this reason, there's only going to be one candidate, and this candidate obviously ends up winning the election, that is Siglinde. Now, I'm not sure in which democratic country or institution the federation, the board of directors, the same people that are going to be competing for a position, decide who is a valid candidate and how they run this election. In every other democracy, there's a specific organ that handles this to avoid a conflict of interest. Now, on July 17th, 2020, that is a few months before the General Assembly, that happens to be another election, there is a letter sent out to the federations informing them that because of COVID-19, the World Congress that was supposed to take place on October 2020 was going to be postponed to March 21st. And on November 19th, 2020, there is a second letter sent out that informs them that because of the uncertainty, they're going to pass it on to October 2021, and the mandates of all of those that are currently sitting in a position will be extended to that date. And the other thing is that the federations that are members of the assembly, the ultimate authority, never got a say in this. They actually proposed an alternative to do this online, but the board of directors decided that this was impossible and that this was something that was not going to take place. And they decided to extend their mandates up until the next General Assembly. Now, this has already been postponed 2 times, and we don't know till when they are going to decide that this election will take place. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, all this was based on official documents sent out by the International Federation that you can read in the link below. And also, if you're interested in our conversation, you can listen to it as well. I'll see you guys in the next video.